Here we go. Let's do this, 2023. I'm going to call the meeting to order 6:31. And first up is our consent agenda. We have our prior minutes from the December meeting as well as a second read on a number of policies. Any discussion or questions? No? Oh, so I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda. We'll do that by roll. Miranda?
Aye.
Arlene?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Lisa?
Aye.
Kat?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
And Mary is an aye. Lynn, any need to reprioritize the flow of the meeting tonight?
You're muted.
Can she hear?
She's muted.
Sorry.
No
You
problem.
may want me to go first before budget, Mary.
Okay, all right, we'll do that. Sounds good. And I don't see, oh, no, I do. We have one visitor. Is this yours? Okay, all right, great. Welcome. And, no one in the virtual world, eh?
Nope.
All right, okay. We have no school spotlight this month because we've got a heavy lift with budget discussion. So Lynn, that brings us to you.
Okay. It was a little quicker than I thought you were going to get to me. I just need to send something
No
off
rush.
to Morgan. I forgot that this is one of the months that we don't have a spotlight.
Yeah,
So Morgan, I just shared with you.
Oh, I already grabbed that, Lynn.
What's that?
Courtney's on it.
What did you say? Okay, perfect. Okay. So I'll jump into personnel on my agenda, and in terms of hiring, we have long-term principal subs, Lisa Blorm and Julie Benet, who are both on board and have begun their work. And we have a fifth grade teacher in Sheldon who is licensed and is switching from being a paraeducator to being a grade 5 teacher. So I'd ask the board to approve both of those hiring requests.
I'll make that motion to approve those hiring requests by roll. Aaron?
Aye.
Kat?
Aye.
Lisa?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Arlene?
Aye.
Miranda?
Aye.
And Mary is an aye.
Okay, and in terms of resignations, you have one paraeducator who resigned. You still have multiple open positions for this year that we're looking to fill. We're actually transitioning at this point, and we're preparing to be advertising for positions that are available for next year. We already have some listed on School Spring. We would typically wait to advertise those until after we have a budget approval, and I'm not recommending that to principals this year given the competition and hiring process. So you'll see both open positions for now and next year on School Spring. I do have one executive session conversation that I'll need with the board. We can push that to the end of the meeting, Mary, if that works for you.
Yeah, I think that's great. Let's do that at the end.
Okay. All right, next up, Courtney. So we had nothing that came in under students for the board to contend with. Next is a legislative update, and I think our friend Representative Hango, who's on our call today, might have spent her first day in the legislative session today in Montpelier. Is that true, Lisa?
That's correct. Today was our swearing in and seating ceremony and lots of other pomp and circumstance today. We got our committee assignments, so it was a really busy day, but mostly administrative duties.
That's fantastic. Well, congratulations. We're glad you're there in Montpelier. So now that we know that committee assignments are done, we're going to be updating we have summary sheet for all the legislators that represent all of our communities in Franklin Northeast. So we'll be updating that and emailing it out to board members so that you can see who our legislative representatives are in case there's something you want to reach out to them about. I will say that, obviously today was their first day. There's several big things that I'll certainly be paying attention to as a school administrator. The first is funding for PCB remediation. I know that that's a big task in front of the legislature this year. Also be looking to see what happens in conversations around school construction aid, religious schools using public money to pay for religious education. And I think the other piece that I certainly have an interest in and will be updating the board about, and this should be no surprise to anyone who's been working with me for a while, is the interest we have in improving mental health within our communities and how much that would help our schools if we were able to really best support our local mental health agencies. So those are things that I'm certainly going to be advocating for as a leader and be watching the progress in Montpelier on all of those initiatives. Morgan, is there anything you want to add there?
I just want to ask Lisa if she's back on general again or what her assignment is.
Actually, I'm not, and general housing, excuse me, and military affairs got chopped up. So I went with the military affairs and Department of Liquor and Lottery jurisdiction over to government operations, which basically is local, municipal, state government administrative. So that's going to be new and different, but I'm taking with me two areas that I know something about. So that's pretty exciting.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah, you should actually pay attention. Thank you. You're welcome. You should pay attention to the new committee descriptions because pretty much all of the committees have changed a little bit in their areas of jurisdiction. Education has largely remained the same, but there are some minor changes. So it'll be interesting to see if that affects our work as a board. I don't think it will.
Did I'm trying to think who the mental health committee was last year. Did that change?
No, I think that's still in the healthcare committee.
Okay.
But I do think the human services committee, there's some overlap there as well.
Okay, perfect. All right, if there's nothing else on legislative updates, I will just ask you as board members, you'll be getting regular updates from Sue Suglowski at the Vermont School Boards Association. She'll send those out about every couple of weeks, and I think it's important for you to skip through those and take a look because a lot that happens in Montpelier has a direct impact on us in the world of education. So I think it's important for you as board members to try to keep up with what's happening there. And if you ever want to have a conversation, don't hesitate to reach out to myself or to Morgan or to your advocates at the Vermont School Boards Association. Next on the agenda is this is the meeting each month that we typically ask the board to approve a contemplation of a reduction in the workforce. And we do that annually in case we lose funding for mostly for our grant funded positions or if budgets were not to go down. This is I'm going to propose something a little different this year. We have not been able to fill the positions that we currently have. I'm not anticipating that this is going to be a kind of a year where we're going to need to make reductions to the workforce. I think we're in kind of an opposite place from what we have been historically. So I'm actually going to recommend to the board that you do not send a letter contemplating a reduction in force this year. Even though this has been a standard notification, I think this is a different kind of year. And I think protecting our workforce is what our focus is rather than contemplating any form of reduction.
I think that sounds fine, Lynn, and makes good sense this year. Anyone else feel differently? Great.
Okay. So I will not go ahead and send those letters out. I'm realizing, Courtney, that there's no links in the next slide, so I might need to do some backdoor linking in information. It might take me just a second. I think I'm gonna start actually with Rhoda, and then I'm gonna find the links and put them in the slide while Rhoda's talking.
Okay.
Back in, I want to say maybe June, we had this conversation about Bakersfield's unique after-school program, which has taken on more of a role of childcare for the community. It has early hours and it has late hours and it has hours that function over school vacations and throughout the summer. So one of the things we asked Rhoda to do this fall was to take a deep look at the financials associated with that program and take a look at whether or not this was a program that it is self-sustaining or if we're having to contribute to it as a school community. We asked her to take a look at her participation report and her parent survey results as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Rhoda. I think maybe save financials for last, Rhoda.
Okay.
And can you talk through the participation report and the parent survey results?
Yep.
And I'll try to find those links.
So this year, our ASP program ran throughout the summer months from the day that school ended right up until August 19th, which was just before teacher in service. And then LEAPS also ran for the month of July, and some of our students went to LEAPS as well. But they have to bus, they're going to Enosburg when they're leaving Bakersfield on a bus for that. Many of our families with younger children choose to have them stay at the ASP program because they don't want them on a bus, and because it runs until 5:30, so there's that childcare piece that's involved. So during the summer, we had 23 families and 30 students, with closer to 35 students there's 2 weeks of swim lessons in the middle of that we do as a part of that program. And that's kind of been the average numbers, and that continued this past summer as well to be about what the numbers were. During the school year, the ASP program runs right as the first day school starts up until LEAPS takes over, and then in between LEAP sessions and on school vacations throughout the year. And we've been running an average of about 20 students during those sessions. So
Rhoda, would it help? I have everything linked in there now, Courtney. If you refresh, you should be able to see it. Would you like her to put the either the parent survey results up or the participation report up?
Probably the survey results would make most sense right now.
The parent
Okay.
survey.
Yep. So I sent out a survey to all of our families, and 17 of those families participated in the survey. And so the results are up there. Let me see. So 82% of our families, of the ones that responded, said that they have enrolled their children in the ASP program that we have currently. And 82% again said that they would continue or consider enrolling in the future. And then I asked, does the Bakersfield ASP program fill a daycare need for your family? And 82% of those families said yes. Do they have any other daycare options? 76.5% said no, they do not. And 76.5% said that they don't attend any other daycare. There's 11% that said that some of the time they do, and 11% that said yes, they have other daycare options. And then there were just some quotes that people put. I gave them an opportunity to say, how they felt about the ASP program or anything else that they wanted to share. So some of the things that people said was that they love the ASP program. It has helped them a lot. In the past, one person said as a single mother to be able to rely on that daycare. And that the staff are loving and their kids like to go. This is a need for their family and is very grateful was another statement. Tremendous service to our community and that their Fairfield friends were jealous. Another one said thank you for their support and that they work at Smugs and have an option for ASP during the summer, but during the school year, this has been very helpful. And another one said it's been a lifesaver for them. So those are just some of the little anecdotes to that survey. And I did do a little bit of research around other options in Bakersfield. And right now, if you look up daycares that are registered or licensed, Bakersfield comes up as two programs, which is our preschool, play school, and the ASP program. And then there's only one other daycare that comes up as registered or licensed. And she usually takes younger children, not school-age children, unless their families have been with them from the beginning. There is another at-home daycare in town that's not licensed. She also takes younger children. And so for families seeking options for daycare, they would have to travel to Enosburg, St. Albans, Jeffersonville, surrounding areas. And then I did ask some financial questions, and do you want to talk a little bit about that financial part, Lynn, or do you want me to keep going? You're muted again, sorry.
I think we can maybe tag team.
Okay.
Rhoda, do you want me to put on the report, the financial report?
Sure, you can put that up there.
So I just want to remind people, one of the reasons why we were unsure about the financial piece is that we actually there was one person that was doing both LEAPS and ASP and was working as a paraeducator. So there was a lot that was falling under that umbrella, probably more than what that person was letting us know in terms of billable hours. So when we disconnected those two positions and we hired someone to do this work, our wonder was, will this be a self-sustaining program? What are the financials going to look like? So this is what I've asked Rhoda to do, is what you asked her to do back in June, is to be able to share about where we are at this point. So why don't you start us off?
Okay. So currently our daycare program is $20 a day for a full day and $10 a day for the after-school piece, which is pretty cheap daycare.
Courtney, can you click on the mid-year financial report?
We're trying, it's sideways, so where everybody's not
I
gonna
see.
see it the right way. So we're trying to flip it.
Okay, I'll look at it on my screen then.
So we have talked about upping that price. We haven't done it yet, but I do think that there is a need to up that price if we were to continue this. We're going to keep continuing this program, which would be a help. So I did ask for this report. It is sideways, so I don't know if we can turn it.
Yeah, we're almost there, hold on.
Courtney, can you make it so that it's part of the document
Would you, oh, I can put it,
for
sure,
us? 'Cause
in the agenda?
Yeah,
Okay.
I can't
Yes,
see that
I know,
far away.
I'm sorry, I can't.
Kind of the bottom line of this report is that there's a current balance of just over $9,000. However, one of the things that Lynn and I talked a little bit about is, there was a starting balance. So there was a starting balance of a little over 14,000. The revenues right now that's been brought in for the first part of this year, well, for this July on, right, July 1 on, the revenue has been 16,900, so almost 17,000, and expenses have been 21,677. So there was that beginning balance they already had, and now they're at this place of about $9,398.
It's on, right side up now on the screen.
There you go. So the writing at the bottom is really what goes over those pieces that I just said.
So I think that one of the things we were trying to tease out is, you know, where are we in terms of, if we had a $14,300 beginning balance and we're ending this first half of the year right around 4,000, 5,000 less, we've tapped into what that fund balance was at the start of the year by about that amount of money. So you can see that our expenses have exceeded the revenue. One of the pieces of information, Rhoda, that we didn't have in our conversation, I don't know if you have it yet, is the what did you find out in terms of subsidy?
Yeah, so I think we're all caught up with it. We have all the subsidy that we're gonna get at this point in the year. They're not behind on those payments as far as I could gather.
Okay. So you started the year with a beginning balance of 14,300, and you're ending this first half of the year at 9,300,
Yep.
almost 9,400.
I will say that I know from talking with Sharon Lawyer, who actually is here tonight, that there's been some ebbs and flows in that balance over time, and that has been the case right along. There are definitely parts of the times of the year when it's, you know, they get pretty close to zero and then they get back up again. We also have done some pulling in of some grant funding here and there for different things that Holly had applied for different grants on. And then we do have the subsidy piece. So I still think it's a little bit hard to tease this out exactly, but that is where we're at right now.
And so just to clarify,
So-
families are paying $20 a day
Mhm.
for a full day of childcare
In the summer.
in the summer.
And vacations,
And
right?
are some of
And
those
vacations.
10.5 hours,
10.5 hours?
7 to 5:30.
Yeah.
We started at, I hope it's okay for me to interject.
Sure, of course. Do you want to introduce yourself?
I
so
would,
folks
and I
know
would
who
like
you
to
are?
share a 2-minute something that I think might answer some questions. I tried to be succinct.
Sure, of
I
course.
have my reason for being here in an official capacity, but let me introduce myself. I'm Sharon Lawyer. My day job is an SLP in Berkshire and Bakersfield. I'm also a resident of Bakersfield. I'm going to read you this. In the early fall of 1998, a Bakersfield parent found that her child care provider decided to stop taking school-aged children for after-school care because it was too disruptive to the young ones still napping. She lived across the street from the school. She chatted with other parents and found the need for school-aged childcare was not unique to her. She began researching what it would take to get a program licensed by the state and spent many hours after her workday navigating the ins and outs of getting licensed. 4 months later, the program became official in February 1999 at the cost of $18 a day. That parent was me, and my children were in 2nd and 4th grade at the time. 24 years later, we continue to be a licensed school-age child care program, offering community child care when LEAPS does not run, namely the between weeks, school vacations, and throughout the summer. Annually, we have to renew our program license, participate in ongoing professional development for staff, including maintaining CPR and first aid certification, and more recently, acquire STARS certification as a quality indicator for the program. We renewed the STARS last year for 3 years, maintaining our 4 stars recognition. I supported Holly through this process. Anissa Seguin had done it 3 years earlier, with my spending over 50 hours outside of my workday volunteering to get this paperwork done. Why do I do it, you ask? As a working parent for almost 40 years in a small community, I believe in the need for consistent school-age care so that parents can work and not worry about their children. I also believe that subsidized care is important for some, but if they can, parents should pay for this need for their children. And that is how we have been able to maintain the program for a generation. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and Sharon and I had talked earlier about just that we do need to up that price because I don't think that it's sustainable at $20.
If anybody wants to see, that's our STARS recognition, and that's a copy of our license. I just thought it might be helpful to see it in officiality.
And so individual families can qualify through the state based on need, income, and other factors for a subsidy. But the subsidy, I suspect, is more than a $20 a day, $100
Yeah, and
a week
we also,
subsidy.
because of our STARS recognition, on paper, by the way, I am the director, I take no salary for that, but this is a very near and dear program to me. I want it to succeed. I have been grateful for the school allowing us to use the facility and for using the insurance rider and for using the SU as the fiscal agent. But it has been our job to support the program. And I look over the numbers, you know, we have a new person running, Rhonda's the new person, Holly is not, she's retired. We have to do that. I mean, years ago, Bill Samuelson said to me, as long as you're in the black at the end of the year, you're okay. But we will shut you down if you go in the red. And Jay Nichols said the same thing, and then he became a very strong supporter of the program. And we are a bedroom community. I can see Route 36 from my house. Between 5:30 and 7 o'clock, a lot of cars pass west. And there is not work for them. People are working in St. Albans and Burlington. And part of the reason why we have these long days is parents can't get back. They can't be back at 3 o'clock. We can't even have all of them back at 5 o'clock, which is why we have run till 5:30. We actually used to run till 6. And then we felt like that just was, we had to make a little bit of a change. But, yeah, I mean, what we did a survey last year, I did some asking around. Childcare rates are between 30 and 40 in our community. There's a couple of other, it's a cottage industry as far as I'm concerned. People, you know, hang a shingle out their door and say they're childcare, $30 to $40. So we should be competitive. And to be honest, if we don't have enough families to sustain it with a higher price, then that tells us the need isn't there. You know, I don't want to support something that doesn't have a need, but if there's a need, I certainly want to support it.
I think there's another piece to this that plays into some of the historical context, and I think that's the connection between the ASP and the LEAPS program. So I don't remember the year, and Sharon, maybe you have this. I know that Anissa was the principal, I believe, so I'm thinking it was somewhere around 2014 to 16. There was a decision made to move the Bakersfield Summer LEAPS program to Enosburg, and I've asked Heather Moore to be here today to just talk a little bit about that. That it was, at the time, it had to do with, none of us who are here really were a part of that decision, but I think it had to do with numbers and trying to capitalize on sending kids to Enosburg to kind of share that resource and be able to offer more for the students together than you could separately. So Heather and I have had conversations about it's really not an equitable practice to have a LEAP summer program in all of our communities except Bakersfield. And the reality is the way we're operating right now makes no sense because the ASP program is actually competing with the LEAPS program during those summer program weeks. So Heather, do you want to take a stab at talking about the opportunities that we're exploring for this next summer for Bakersfield?
Yeah, so like Lynn said, the question about equity for the summer hours, summertime has come up in conversations a lot, ever since it kind of basically got, the LEAPS program was shifted from the Bakersfield community to Enosburg. And so, just for those of you who aren't aware, we've been busing Bakersfield students to Enosburg Elementary or Middle High School for programming. It originally had a good 20 students in its first year, but each year has kind of gone down. And with that, it seems the enrollment in the licensed childcare has kind of increased a little bit. So as we've kind of been doing some exploration about equity within our SU, and LEAPS recently had a site visit from the Agency of Education, part of the question has come up, well, do you have this 5-week highly enriching LEAPS program, and that's free, but Bakersfield students aren't participating in it, so families that want to participate in something, they're paying for programming for those 5 weeks. So we've been looking into, could we bring a program back into Bakersfield? How would we potentially partner if the ASP program continues on so that we're not in a conflict? Lynn and I just hit the submit button that's like at 4:29 today on grant funding that would potentially cover a LEAPS program at Bakersfield this summer. And next year is a 21C renewal application year. So that means summer 2024 is when we would be receiving new 21C funds. And the director of 21C programming at the state level said that that would qualify, Bakersfield summer program would qualify as an expansion programming. So we'd be looking at some more funding from 21C to cover 100% of the costs for the first 3 years, and then incrementally, like, we'd have to be responsible for a little bit more after that.
Can I throw in some? I have some historical background that probably a lot of you don't have, because I was at school all those years. And originally, when the LEAPS program came in, the ASP program already had a summer program, and they were doing summer programming. The LEAPS grant was written without input from the Bakersfield people doing their program. So that's why it wasn't in Bakersfield, or wasn't. The problem with the busing, I think, has more to do with parents saying, one, the timing doesn't mesh if they need daycare for the full day. And the other piece is sending young children on a bus.
To a school that they don't know.
Yes.
We all want our children to go to their own school,
Right.
not to somebody else's school, and I think that's a
Yeah.
huge piece. I mean, I think the busing, because many kids ride a bus, but if it's in your own community versus
Yeah.
10 miles away.
And I think,
Yeah, I think that's what we're trying to rectify, is to try to do this work. We have to, this board is tasked with something a little bit different than previous boards have been tasked with, and that's looking at across the board, what does equity mean to us as a system? And I think this notion, Sharon, that you present about the childcare needs in Bakersfield, this conversation began with the question of, is this equitable that we're providing this childcare option in one of our communities, and we're not providing it in others? Not that I'm suggesting we go into this business in the other communities, but this is why the data was asked to be brought back. And in the meantime, we identified that inequity in terms of the LEAPS piece, and we don't disagree with you in terms of the number of students accessing LEAPS. And the wonder is, if LEAPS were back in Bakersfield, what would the enrollment look like? And that could be something that could be free for all families
okay, Lynn,
during those 5 weeks.
I just have a question too. We talked at retreat about equity not being the same as equal, and that meeting the needs of the
Right.
community. And knowing that our community does not have childcare that's registered, and it's a big deal. I know, I mean, my own grandchildren are in that situation.
I mean, Enosburg and Richford have, and I don't know how many of you are familiar with childcare, there's registered and there's licensed. The big programs are the licensed. Richford has one, Enosburg has one. Bakersfield has none, and it has a registered home daycare, and the others are all cottage industry. And I don't know about most of you, but when my kids are 2nd and 4th grade, they're not going home alone, and they're certainly not spending the day alone. I think if LEAPS were back in Bakersfield, you would see many of the children you see during the LEAPS after school attending. And then we would build the after-school program around because 5 weeks out of the summer is lovely, but there's still 5 more weeks. The middle of June, when school gets out, parents still need care. And because our parents work further, they need it beyond 3 o'clock. So I think there can be some combining of the programs. I just, and I would envision, we would hope to, swim is something that was, I felt not enough kids in Vermont know how to swim. And so when we started the program, I said, I would love to see, and I know we've got another swim instructor, I was a former swim instructor, teach the kids a life skill that they can have. And getting on that bus and sending them to the pool, it's a busy, 8 days, because they're now only 4 days a week, but the experience the kids get from that, because parents don't have the time to do it. And why bring more non-swimmers into places where there's water around us?
Well, and as a former phys ed teacher, I know that we have a lot of non-swimmers in our community. And this is a program that just, like you say, it's dear to my heart that we get those kids on that bus for swimming lessons every year.
And it's not to get them to the top, it's to get them safe in water for a life skill.
Can either Rhoda or Lynn, can you clarify for me and for the board what the overall ask is around the ASP program? Is it that we're looking at these numbers and trying to see, I hear that historically the position has been the program needs to be profitable or at least not in the negative numbers. Is the issue in front of the board about how we're going to continue to fund the program, whether the revenue is enough coming in, whether we need to charge more? I just need a little clarification around what's the ask for the board regarding the ASP program? And I'm hearing this kind of interface with LEAPS, and I really applaud any move we can make toward having LEAPS accessible for the Bakersfield community at Bakersfield and not having to bus the kids to Enosburg. But that's slightly separate from what I'm sensing where we're needing to land specific to the ASP program.
Well, I think that really comes back to the board also, Mary, because this is us bringing data back that was requested from a previous meeting. So from my recollection, the ask was, can we prove that this is a financially sustainable program? And I think, when I'm hearing from Sharon and Rhoda, is there's some conversation about increasing, what it costs each day. When I heard 10 hours, I was thinking that's $2 an hour for childcare. And my kids are pretty old at this point, and I paid more than that when they were younger. So I think that could be viable. So the ask could be that you ask them to make a change to the funding of this in terms of what the parent contribution is, and then ask them to come back with financials at the end of the year to see if this is sustainable. Or it could be, does the board want to entertain the conversation about whether or not we remain in the child care realm, or are we in a place where we're not wanting to continue on in the child care realm?
And Lynn, would one of the other options be for the Northeast Supervisory Union to not act as the fiscal agent? I don't want to make it difficult, but this program is, there are things that the SU does, and then the rest we do ourselves.
I think that I hear that, and I certainly am not trying to say that I think that it's the right thing to stop offering the child care. I'm looking at it through the lens of there are other communities. If we did a deep dive in terms of what's available for families, we're not offering the same level of supports for families in other communities. So I think that the idea of the system only really kind of, we're employing the people, we're the fiscal agent, it's happening in the building, we're doing the community, it's a school-led. I know that people are volunteering their time, Sharon, but it's very much a part of the school fabric, and the way it's currently designed is not separate apart from the public school.
And should it be? I guess that's my question. Should we operate somewhere else in town? Should we have a different fiscal agent and continue on?
I mean, that's a question for the board. That's one of the pieces that the board is having to contend with. And this may not be something, I'm starting to get a little worried about time in this meeting. It may not be something that the board is ready to act on tonight, but maybe there's an ask for us to come back with something at your February meeting, or your March meeting.
Yeah, I mean, given the kind of time we need to devote to budget discussion tonight, I mean, we may need to punt this. I mean, I absolutely recognize the value of the program. It's unequivocal. I don't have any qualms with that. It seems to serve a very valuable role in the community. I mean, and when I was a young parent, there was nothing in my town for childcare. So I am very sympathetic to the challenges of childcare for working families.
And there wasn't in our town. I was the one that did it.
Right.
You know, and I did it after hours. Because what was I going to do? I can't even retell you for those 4 months what I did for my kids. They went someplace and I probably was really scrambling.
And I would just
Mary,
ask,
I'm going to recommend, unless the board you're feeling like you want to make a decision tonight, we either pause and come back to this if there's time at the end of the meeting, or, I mean, we're 45 minutes in and you still have budget and principal search to get through, which are both going to be long.
Yeah, I think we should table it. I certainly wouldn't feel comfortable making a final decision on this. We really just are scratching the surface about some of these fiscal components and some of these questions about where it is physically located, and so maybe we come back to it at the next.
Would you have an ask? I'm wondering if you might want to have an ask of Rhoda to come back with a financial report at your March meeting, and then for Rhoda and potentially Sharon to be working on a new fee structure to try to have a little less fund balance being used between now and then in that program.
I definitely think we need to be charging more for the program. That seems pretty clear to me. So looking at comparables in the community, and then maybe getting a sense for how many the families for whom that would be onerous, they would probably qualify for subsidies. And so, I wouldn't want to have a fee structure that was harmful and limited someone's ability to access a critical service, but those families will generally be covered by the state subsidies for childcare, even if we were to increase the amount. But I think playing around with some of that fiscal piece, and how can we, how can it be maybe a slightly more profitable? I mean, I don't know that the goal is profit, but certainly not be operating in the negative realm.
Yes. Or on
Mary,
I think
I would just ask that we make the decision sooner rather than later, because even in March, parents are going to be struggling for summer care if we don't continue. So that's something.
I'm asking for March, Arlene, because what I'm about to ask you in terms of principal search process and what I'm going to ask to do in your February meeting. So there wouldn't be space in February.
I understand. I just don't want us to go into April and then May.
Yeah.
And leave those parents in the lurch.
Certainly.
Can we also be given like a recap of just sort of the basics? Because I just feel like, I don't know if I'm the only one, but I'm completely like missing the point as to like what Bakersfield has versus what the other schools have. I don't know if I missed it in this meeting, and I do remember the meeting prior, but I just want to see kind of apples to apples. And there's other schools in our district, as we pointed out, that are in the same boat, I feel like, that also have missing weeks and missing, everyone's kind of in the same boat, and there's no childcare anywhere. So I get that it's how it's been done here, but I just feel like I need to have a better understanding of what exactly they're doing that the rest of us aren't. and then what the ask is.
I also would like to see maybe last year and the year before, fiscal information just to see what the history is, because I feel like we're just looking at, like, this is the first year with a different leadership, and right now we're seeing a dip, and if it goes up and down, like, and we're looking at it and that looks a little concerning, but if it goes back up, then because spring gets a little busier and parents need that, then, you know, is this really a big concern of financial piece? And I know that's one aspect of it, and the other aspect is equity, but I'd like to see a little bit more of the history of what the books look like in the previous couple of years, because it sounds like that it's always worked out in the end. So if the fiscal piece isn't as big of an issue, especially if you increase the fee a little bit, then I have no concerns.
So I don't sense that I'm hearing any resistance to adding a LEAPS program in Bakersfield, which was the other piece of the conversation tonight.
I'll tell you that I worked that program when it got pulled away, and people were not happy, but they made the ASP program came in and kind of saved that. I think people would be super excited to bring the LEAPS back and have the ASP there to support it like it used to.
Okay. So if you're good with it, Mary, I'm going to move on to the next agenda item.
Yes.
Okay. So next up, I want to talk about the Sheldon principal search. So as you can imagine, I've spent a fair amount of time thinking about this process and strategizing. I went out and advertised for this a little earlier than normal. And so I've been thinking about, you know, what's the timeline? What should it look like? And as you know, last year we had one round and we ended up having to go back out for a second round search, and that put us pretty late in the year. And that first round we didn't complete until just before the February vacation. So what I'm going to propose, I'm going to Courtney click on the link. There's a more condensed timeline this year and similar process, but a little different. So we posted on December 16th for this position. We just had JD refresh the ad on the 3rd. So it's back at the top of School Spring. The application deadline is now listed as January 12th. I'm proposing that tonight you formally approve this hiring timeline. I'm going to give you a little bit of time in executive at the end to look at interview questions and review stakeholder participation, determining who on the board will serve on the screening committee. I'm thinking we need a smaller screening committee this year than we had last year. There are other ways that people can participate in this process. So it would be great if there could be one board member. If we need to go to 2, we could go to 2, but I'm thinking that our committee we should try to make it around 10. It was a lot of people last year, and I think we can narrow that down a little bit. I'm also looking for a board representative to work with me on doing reference checks on all the finalists and someone who's willing to go out on site visits. So here's the speed in which I would like to do this. I would like to post the community interest survey tomorrow to see who would like to participate in the hiring process. I would like to close that interest survey on Monday, so it would give people over the weekend, I think it's for 1 on 5 days. And then we would work to develop who I would work with Mary and some of the central office leaders to figure out who the representatives for the screening committee would be. I'm going to be meeting with the Sheldon staff on the 10th to review this timeline and vote. We're going to go over the process, and they're going to give me some information about their staff priorities. I'll have Courtney reach out to everyone who is going to serve on the screening committee and confirm that all the dates work. And then we would move right into the work. So the first committee meeting would be on the 13th. You can see the list of objectives that they would have during that meeting. They'd be trying to narrow down, begin to work on questions, and they would get access to a survey and get access to all of the candidates at that time. They would have the next few days to look over all of those candidates. It's over a weekend because that meeting would be on a Friday. They would come back on the 17th and they would identify who the people that they want to interview are. So they would finalize their work on questions, and then we would have the screening committee interviews on the 23rd. We would identify the finalists that they want to recommend that go forward to the board, and then we would notify those finalists the next day on the 24th. And I would like to propose that your February meeting turns into the meeting that the board interviews candidates at. So it would be February 1st. So it moves up your timeline by about 3 weeks, and that's strategic in that I think it's important. I think Morgan looked yesterday, and there are 5 other principalships in Vermont that posted this week. So I think that we're going to have some competition for our candidates, so I don't want to sit on this process too long. So I would like to propose that instead of having your regular meeting at 6:30 on February 1st, that you have a business meeting at 4:30 and have it be a very short board meeting. I'm not even certain that you would need your principals at that meeting. You take care of any required business and hold everything else from that agenda, and then begin your interview of candidates at 5. I would recommend that you hold space in case there are 3 candidates. The committee has to send forward at least 2, but I'm going to ask them not to send more than 3. So we know, as this went last year, it's a lot of work to unpack all of the feedback that you would have on that day. So I would think that I would anticipate that if there were 3 candidates, you would probably be there until around 9. So then I would like to be able to make an offer that next day on February 2nd. So I would love to hear what the board's feedback is on that timeline.
Sounds pretty intense.
It's rapid pace, but I think it makes sense given the hiring landscape for administrators right now. So I think we can, I
think so.
I can't speak for everyone, but I think that I'm up for the role of helping support it at that pace. What do others?
So Lynn, is there a contingency plan if we don't get candidates, or if we just get one that we're interested in interviewing?
We have 8 candidates so far, and I know of at least 2 others who have reached out that are applying.
Okay.
So we'll have 10. They're not all viable candidates. There are some that I won't push through to the screening committee because they're not near a licensure or even an educator endorsement that would be appropriate for the role. So I think that the contingency plan, Lisa, is if we get through the process and we don't find the match, is we reopen on February 2nd, which would still give us, even if we did another 6-week process, we could still hopefully have someone hired by the middle of March, which would be right around the time that we concluded last year. So by doing this faster, it would give us space to do 2 rounds if we absolutely needed to, but I'm hopeful we won't need that.
Okay, I might have missed somewhere if you said that there were already 8 candidates, so thanks.
I have not said that. I didn't say that, so thank you for asking that question.
Sure.
Any other questions on the timeline or process?
Lynn, you said that there's going to be a 10-person committee all told?
Last year it was closer to 20, and it was too much.
Oh, that's way too many.
It was.
Yeah.
I think we had 18 last year, and I'm not sure if the 18 included Courtney and I or not. I'm not remembering, but it really felt like it was too large. So I think we would be better served by a smaller representative committee. But I think that the Sheldon community is in a little bit of a different place now, and I think they understand the process, so they know that even if they're not on the screening committee, they're still going to have opportunities to meet these candidates and be a part of the process through the stakeholder engagement piece.
Even coordinating the schedules of 10 people seems like a lot to me.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we want to talk about it being even fewer than 10.
But I think that it may turn out that way, Mary, based on people's availability, because it is a quick turnaround. And if they're going to be a part of it, they need to be a part of all of it. They can't miss a piece and then step back in. It wouldn't be appropriate for them not to be a part of all of it. So they would know that going in, and we would confirm that as they're kind of accepting the role, that they could do all of it. The question I have is about, from this board, we have 8 members on this board. Do we have at least 5 that could make it at 4:30 on February 1st?
I definitely can. I'm fully vested in whatever meeting, timeline, I'll make whatever work. And I'm happy to help with site visits, reference checks. I'm happy to do all that lifting.
I could, as long as I just worry about the weather getting from my school over to Sheldon, but if the weather's bad, it's okay that we Zoom in. I know it's not ideal to do that, but is that okay?
Yeah, I think if you can't make it back, it would be more ideal if you could be in person, but if you can't, I would love to be able to have quorum.
Okay.
So I'm hearing Emily and Aaron are there, and maybe people are showing their hands. I just can't see. I'm sorry I wasn't able to be there in
No, it
person.
looks like Arlene is a yes, Miranda is a yes.
I do a lot of audits, so for my work, so
Okay.
I can say yes, but I may be
Okay,
in a situation where I can't,
totally understood.
but I can right now.
I can be there. And John?
I'm off from work that day. So.
Okay, John can be there, and so Kat,
I can be there.
okay, so it sounds like everyone's a yes,
So we've got a quorum.
Miranda is a will try maybe.
Okay.
Is there gonna be a Zoom option? Because that would be the only way I could make it, and I may not make it until that 5:30 time frame.
I think that we could make a Zoom option. I would ask the board to consider or for you to consider, Lisa, if the first interview begins at 5, what disadvantage would that give that candidate if you only got to hear half?
Oh, sorry, I thought you said interviews would begin at 5:30. I
So I was
misunderstood.
thinking
Yeah, I would try to
5.
be there at 5, but it would be by Zoom, and I don't have a guarantee of that yet.
Right. I figured you probably wouldn't know yet.
Thanks.
So yeah, I think we'll make sure that we send that out. So as long as the board formally approves that process, we can move on to the next piece. This is the stuff that we needed to get to before you go into your budget discussions. So you asked me to come back with more information about Sheldon and their growth and the needs that have been identified. So there are 3 pieces that I'm going to talk about tonight. The first is population growth, the second is space needs, and the third is staffing needs. So first, talking about population growth, I would love to take credit for what's on the next slide, but I am not skilled enough to produce what's on the next slide. Only Morgan is able to do this. Courtney, can you advance for me? So you've seen this slide before where you could see what Sheldon's population has done since 2020. They've had a really steep population increase, and they felt the pressures of that additional enrollment in their school, and the projections that Maureen is making have them really on the fastest, the biggest incline in terms of growth across the supervisory union. Next slide. Took a look at enrollment numbers in NMV. We looked through, these are October 1 enrollment numbers. So this is what gets reported to the state. So this year, Sheldon's October 1 enrollment number was 333 students. So you can see from when they came to us in 2018, I think they're at 286. So that's pretty substantial growth, almost 50 students in that amount of time. Next slide. I'm just showing you the October 1 enrollments in our ER schools, because one of the things I want you to note is this year, 2022, Sheldon has 333 students. which makes them the largest school in the supervisory union, including our high schools. Next. We did a space assessment last year in Sheldon, and the board was engaged in 2 spacing decisions in Sheldon. The first was we had a long wait list for our students in preschool, and we were not offering enough to meet the minimum expectation for our 3-year-old program. So we made a decision to add on a pre-K classroom. And we also identified that there were 3 multi-age 3-4 classrooms, and there really needed to be 4, 2 third grades and 2 fourth grades. So by way of Vern's magic and finding ways to reduce certain spaces in the building, we were able to carve out 2 additional classroom spaces in Sheldon. However, that did not leave us with anything else to carve into a classroom space. So the last remaining, for now, the last remaining dilemma is around the middle school in Sheldon. So we're actually the largest middle school supervisory union with the fewest spaces. So there are 6 groups of students in 6 through 8 if you divide each group into 2, which they're not right now currently always divided into 2 groups. And that leaves them with class sizes in the high 20s to low 30s. So right now they're trying to juggle those 6 groups of students with only 4 classroom spaces. So it has made it very challenging schedule-wise and very challenging in terms of how they're able to meet the needs with those students. So they've had to put a lot of electives in, and that actually shortens the amount of content time that those students get with their classroom teachers. So the proposal that I have before you tonight is the addition of 4 additional classroom spaces. 2 of those classroom spaces would be for an immediate need right now to fulfill the need for 2 additional classrooms. The other 2 spaces would, given that steep growth curve, would be a little bit of future-proofing in Sheldon, but there's a need also for small group intervention in workspaces. So that is the ask in terms of space. So I'm going to turn it over to Vern, who has some information for you on modular classroom options and site work. So Courtney, if you could click his slideshow.
Can I just add one thing before we get into that? I just wanted to clarify that when we added on the additional pre-K classroom, I say add on, we actually took away from our music room. So with those numbers, we also have a very high enrollment of kids who are in band and chorus. So they are now all in like half the size of what they were before. So that space that we took away from the music room is a beautiful new classroom. However, it's not soundproof. So if you go into that preschool at any point during the day, it's very hard to focus because all you hear is the beautiful music. But if you're, a 3 or a 4-year-old, I think we did what we could with what we had, but I know it's incredibly challenging.
Mm-hmm. We also took away an intervention space that we had available previously. So Vern, could you walk us through some of those options maybe?
Yeah, so I reached out to 2 modular companies as well as Vermont, which they build energy efficient houses. I gotta be honest with you, a couple of these are really all over the place as far as dollars. But what you're looking at right now are a couple of the models from two of the modular companies that basically classrooms that they offer. We're not going crazy. We want to connect this building to the existing school as far as safety and being able to get students back into that section of the school. So we're not going crazy as far as bathrooms or anything like that. It's basically going to be bare bones for 4 classrooms with electricity and fire. So we're not really going too extravagant. Basically, we're going to try to fit the needs of what we're looking at. So, like I said, this is just a couple of what they offer for classrooms in the modular end of it. Go ahead, Courtney. So this was the first quote that we got from Box. And it's not a great drawing, but it's basically 715 square feet per classroom with a corridor going right down the middle. Again, bare bones, I was kind of hoping to have something a little bit dressier for you, but getting these quotes has been a challenge in the time frame that we've got. So this was one that I thought would work for us. Go ahead, Corey. This is a second quote, and this is the Mod Genius. They didn't throw a drawing at us, but this one is, all these modular companies can only build certain size buildings. They're not set up to build a 60 by 60 building. So this particular one offered, I can't remember, Courtney, but I think it was like a 26 by, this was basically half the size. If you can go back to the other one, Court, just back up just a minute. Do we have the dollar amount on that?
Yeah, it's,
So for this building, which was right around 2,500 square feet, it was $456,000. $456,000. That is just a building. That's not the concrete slab work that we need to get done. That's not the electrical. So this was the one that fits our needs, I feel, the best. Back to the second one, Court. This one was a smaller version, and Courtney, can you see that?
the number
216,000?
216.
You young eyes. So basically, but this is basically a half of what the other building was, which made me feel pretty good, because if you take that one and basically double it, it's basically about the same. And then the third quote, I about passed out. This was a Vermont that they built a building for St. Albans City School for their pre-K program about 8 years ago. And I was super impressed with it because it's built all as high efficient as you can get. But what they're drawing, Morgan and I feel looks like a bowling alley, and I just, for the price of it, I just don't know that it would fit our needs financially. They were looking at
865.
Yeah. Each classroom would have its own mechanical room and own HVAC system. So in going forward, and again, these quotes literally came in at 4 o'clock, and I want to thank Courtney for helping me get this slideshow set up. This is kind of a quick synopsis of what we're looking at. I'd like a little bit more time to possibly, Lynn and I spoke, what it would take, and if it's even possible to look at, maybe looking at a stick building this property and seeing if we can save some money. I gotta believe you can build a pretty nice square box for $450,000. So whether or not we go down that path, but like I said, this is kind of a quick put together thing, and getting these numbers for you guys. Like I said, the first two quotes I think are probably within, $10,000 of each other. This third one way off kilter as far as I'm concerned, but.
Well, the hard
So I
thing
think it
about-
at least gives the, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, I mean, I definitely need to go on record saying that I bristle at the idea of putting young kids in a vinyl sided, both interior and exterior building. I mean, the Vermont is a reflection of higher quality building materials that aren't toxic.
Right.
And that's the reason it's so significantly cheaper, is because the materials
I agree.
are cheap and they're toxic.
I don't know about the toxic end of it, but I mean, these
The
buildings.
fact that they're doing vinyl covered sheetrock walls interior
Well,
is
they did say
concerning.
sheetrock walls and ceilings, but I haven't delved that deep into it. I can say that they're all built undercover, and as far as what they're using for product, I haven't gotten that deep into it
I mean, that's one of the
I feel like-
problems with modular, quick to put up buildings, is some of the material choices are questionable as far as indoor air quality and VOC off-gassing. I wouldn't wanna, I feel like so compelled to speak up around that. It's really something kind of important to me. I'm not saying it's a deal breaker. I think it's unfortunate that sometimes the least expensive options are the worst choice for indoor air quality and kind of ecological mindfulness around building. And Vermont, I'm familiar with them because my husband's company has done some work with them, and it's absolutely kind of, the price is reflective of material choices that are more ecologically sound and don't off-gas like vinyl does in an indoor environment. I mean, I don't know, I can't possibly understand why this would have to have vinyl covered sheetrock on the interior as a building choice. Exterior siding, sure. So, and I don't know if there's any way that this could be modified to be a little bit.
I can research and I'm sure that we can upgrade to anything you want.
Yeah,
But I will tell you, for $800 and some odd thousand, I can build you one will of a house. So
absolutely.
that's a
I mean,
lot of money.
you could
Yeah.
stick frame something
Yes.
with local building materials and much healthier materials overall for that kind of price
Mary,
point.
that's kind of where my mind goes in terms of what is the budget that we're working with, and if we're anticipating that the growth in Sheldon is going to continue, I know we need space right now, but I just have this fear that we're going to drop an obscene amount of money to put these little mobile home looking things, and then in 2-3 years, going to need more. I mean, people want to come to Sheldon. There are no houses for sale in Sheldon, really, but if there were, they would be gone. Families are trying to come here. I'm just wondering, is it worth talking about a real add-on to the school, a true add-on? And I'm not saying that's what I want to happen, but I'm just curious if we're traveling down the path of a, $500,000 to $750,000 price tag for, an extra $350,000, what can we get? I'm really, really curious. And I'm also curious, I mean, I've been involved in one bond vote, obviously, which we did great, as we merged to bring our school up to a certain caliber, but I'm really curious about that conversation. I'm sensitive to that conversation, trying to be, fiscally mindful of everybody's hard work and dollar, but I just worry about this almost Band-Aid solution with a hefty price tag to have to need more slightly down the road.
And none of these quotes, it concerns me that, I get that they're leaving it up to you and they don't do any of the infrastructure, but how much is the electrical, the concrete? I think you said there wouldn't be plumbing, but that stuff can add up. So are we talking like another $200,000-300,000, onto those prices? So it would be interesting to get a quote, like Emily's saying, of like an actual stick-built addition to compare it to these modular ones.
These mod homes come all wired. You basically run your main power to it and they have a box and everything. So everything is complete. These houses, like I said, they're built undercover. That'll all be done. It's just a matter of getting power from our main source out to the building.
And Vern,
You're not having to like run the electrical, like it's
No.
coming wired, you're saying?
That's correct.
But the concrete, we have to pour?
Yes.
Yeah, and Vern got some ballpark quotes on concrete as well, and I just maybe remind you that the purpose of this first round of quotes was really to just get some idea of kind of where the goalposts are in terms of what we're talking about. If we decide to go the route of either a modular or an addition or possibly putting out both of them as options, we would go through a formal bidding process because this is going to be expensive enough to do. We just know that going into warning your budget hopefully tonight, we kind of needed to know if the range was 200 to 300 or 400 to $1 million while we had that discussion. But anything in this price range is going to get bid out, and so what we would do is we would create the specs for it and we would put it out to as many places we could find, probably advertise. But we don't like doing that until we have a rough idea, at least how many digits the number is gonna be when it comes back.
Right. And that's the intention, is just, there was there seemed to be support of the idea at the last meeting, so the board is gonna be asked under Morgan's budget conversation to think about, you know, what do you have in your capital reserve fund, and what do you have for carry forward, and what are you wanting to put into your budget? Because if you're supportive of this, you have to make some decisions to prepare to support this soon, is the hope. Because I hear what you were saying about if we need to look at a stick build, but it would be something that I would hope that we could try to do sooner rather than later, in terms of doing some work around what those estimates might be.
Do we have a timeline difference between stick-built and the modular?
The turnaround time on the modular would be probably quicker, but like Lynn was saying, I mean, it's not unimaginable to be able to pull a stick-built. We could do it, and I think we could come back with some numbers fairly quickly if we choose that. I mean, the big problem we have is that crystal ball. Really, nobody knows as far as growth what we're looking at. You know, I'm sure when you put that addition on, and you thought that you did your job and you anticipated but you can't anticipate, you know, the growth right now. So, and again, would these 4 classrooms suffice for how long? I don't know, but that's the quick way to basically get classroom space. You know, depending on which way you guys want to steer me and send me on my way, you know, I'll do whatever you want to do. The mods were the first discussion, and that's the path that we went down. If you want to entertain looking at a stick-built structure that's solidly built with, you know, greener, that's no problem. I mean,
Yeah.
we can definitely go down that path. The only thing that I would say is we're going to need to know sooner than later, because the time's, you know, the clock's ticking, and if we want to try to get this for the next school year, then we're going to have to move pretty quickly. And that's depending on Shelton zoning. That's, you know, that would probably be whether we can do what we want to do.
The middle road option here is also, you know, we were pricing 4 spaces for 4 groups, which certainly the school could use. If this board is interested in going back to voters with a bond vote for a bigger project there, we could certainly look at a 2-room modular. It's gonna get us, you know, through that time period. I don't know if there's any resale value in it,
Well,
but
the one thing I did
do that now and cover the 2 staff members and the 2 additional classes that you're contemplating in Sheldon.
One thing I didn't share with you is we do have the ability to lease one of these mods too, so we don't get hung with it, I guess per se. But we do have an option of leasing. I didn't really look that deep into it. If my concern is, like Morgan said, if down the road we decide to go for bonding, and it's easier to take that mod out of there versus building something a little bit more permanent that would cover our needs. It's really tough for me to try to predict what's going to happen as far as numbers, or anybody for that matter, but I just...
Do you know off the top of your head what the kind of general range is for new commercial construction price per square foot?
I don't. I did talk to a couple of carpenters the last couple of days just to give me an idea of what and I'm pretty certain you could probably build something certainly less than $800,000.
I mean, this is a combined of 2860 square feet.
Yeah.
The 456,000 one would give us an additional 2,800 square feet of
That's true.
space in those 4 classrooms.
Right, those 750 square foot.
So it's just curious, you know, I know it's different, I'm in the commercial world than
Yeah.
residential price per square
Yeah.
foot, but
I mean, I suppose,
Ballpark, like-
I suppose you could build a steel, not a steel building, but a commercial steel stud building, and I could certainly get a price on that as well. I mean, you guys tell me where you wanna go with this, and I'll you know, I'll put the work in. I guess I have to be told what options you guys wanna do.
I mean, it's just tricky because
I think-
this is kind of an appetizing price point, but you get what you pay for with something like this. And again, like, I mean, there's this tension between budget, fiscal mindfulness, you know, going to the voters for another bond when we already have lots of debt service that we're paying on, and the compromises like that I see when we support a building industry that slaps up these vinyl boxes that are pretty abysmal from an ecological standpoint and even a health standpoint. I just am really like, I don't know. That's where I stumble with this a little bit. So at 28.60 a square feet, if we're looking at, you know, say $400 a square, new construction for commercial, which I think is, you know, probably somewhere the ballpark. And I think that includes site work, all the concrete pour, the utilities and such. You know, we're looking at well over, for a comparable amount of square footage, we are looking at over $1 million there. And so, you know, there's the inherent tension in all these kind of conversations about how to meet the current needs and the projected growth needs and do it in a fiscally responsible way, but also in, you know, mindful of kind of the ecological impact and the health impact for the people that are the students and teachers that are in these spaces. And maybe there's better options for the build out on these modular things, and that's certainly something that I would want to ask.
Well, one of the things that, before we did, I mean, we'd obviously have the site visited because we would have to have this building built to our specifications where the doors are gonna be located, because if we're gonna tie it back into the building, which obviously we have to, you know, that's gonna be some added, you know, to be able to put some kind of connector into the door system so we can safely enter and back into the school. We're certainly not gonna have them walk outside and then walk back into the school, so.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I would definitely do some more research on the mods to your concerns, and I could definitely do some more information for you.
Did you say that there's options with the modulars to lease them?
Yes, and the other thing that I want to share is, we don't necessarily have to put it on a cement pad. If you guys are thinking, I don't know how many years left you have on this bond, but you could do something a lot less money as far as, I mean, literally you could build it up on a cinder block and do something like that if that's what you choose. I mean, like I said,
I just think we should get some quotes on leasing too, because if we're gonna get quotes on building an addition, I don't see where that could reasonably happen this year.
Right.
You
If I
know,
wanna
like,
spend $40,000
what
on a
contractor's
pad to
gonna
put
take
this
that on
building
now, and the engineering and everything that has to be done.
Yeah, I agree.
So kind of a short and a long-term solution, Kat.
Yeah.
So I think that you have the information that we have available so that you can consider that in your budget conversations when Morgan takes the reins in just a minute. I think that, you know, there are some considerations he's going to want you to think about in terms of what you build in to that budget and where we go from here. So do you have a direction you want Vern to come back with some rough estimates of stick builds? Do you want us to come back with some information about lease? Is that what's on the February 1st agenda? We do that quickly at 4:30?
Yeah, and I would add to that, is there flexibility around how these modular buildings are constructed, like, why does it have to have vinyl siding on the inside?
Where are you getting the vinyl siding?
The building will have vinyl covered sheetrock
Okay, but I
walls
think-
and ceilings
Okay,
with
but I think we
carpet
can
in
upgrade,
classrooms
obviously, to
and
those.
VCT corridor.
Okay,
I think when we bid this out, we can put whatever we want
Right.
in the specs. It's
Exactly.
just we may get
Yeah.
nothing back if we do it too hard.
What do you mean?
I mean, if we can say we want the walls to be, gilt, if we want to in our specs, we just might not have anybody willing to bid on it. So the more restrictions you put out there.
I mean, my understanding was that this is kind of what you see is what you get, like hence it being modular and kind of ready to drop in place.
I
So
think
I'm not sure, like, why can you just mud and tape sheetrock and put some good quality, low to no VOC paint on the inside walls and call the interior goods? Like, that would be great. I mean, that only answers kind of one issue, but for me, that's
Right.
really significant. I wouldn't want my kid in a vinyl box all day. No way. I would be bummed. So that would be nice to add that, like what are our options for at least the interior finishes in the modular options? Can they be a little bit more sensitive to indoor air quality and VOC off-gassing? And then the lease option, and then maybe it would be helpful to think about, that number on a new build.
Mhm.
And I mean, and really, if we're gonna start even kind of wrapping our heads around what a true expansion, addition on the school would be, we maybe wanna think a little bit about what are we trying to plan for as best as possible, what kind of growth. This issue that Emily raised around the music building or the music class and it being somewhat disruptive for the adjoining class and some of these things we maybe need to think then about if we are really gonna do an addition, what would that look like? How much space? How many classrooms? A new music space that's maybe set aside so it's not.
And also keeping in the back of your mind that your two largest schools are being tested for BCVs over the next couple of years. And what is
Right.
that due to the conversation?
Right. Meaning that we may have shuffling that needs to happen if certain parts of existing buildings cannot be used because of PCB contamination.
You might find that the vinyl clad can is the best place
The
for the kids to be.
the least of our concerns, yeah, right. Ay, ay, ay. Well, so Lynn, Morgan, then how do we then kind of take some, like, this is a lot of unknowns to try to now head into budget discussion around, a bond and stuff is nothing that we would be putting into place for this budget cycle anyway.
You are correct about that. So, yeah, I don't know if you've got anything else on yours, Lynn, but I can kind of walk you through what I have thought about in terms of the options for Sheldon in the budget, and we can make
Yeah.
changes from there when we get to the budget.
I only had two things left. One is the staff need in Sheldon that, it's on the next slide. So that's really just about matching the staffing model of our other middle school, other smaller middle school, 6 teachers, 6 groups of students, and the intervention roles in Sheldon. And that's why we have put in those other two positions. I'm going to skip the board monitoring plan data review. I'll send that to you electronically, given time. That'll probably go out tomorrow. One thing that the board does need to take action on is John is the board member on the negotiations council. However, John, his wife is one of our support staff members. We missed that when we did the nominations earlier. So John will need to be replaced by someone else on the NMV board for upcoming support staff negotiations. Mary is the other negotiation member. So is there anyone else that could serve in that capacity?
What's the time commitment?
Right now, I'm waiting to get the WHO to send out some information. It's looking like 3 evenings is what our goal is. So I think it's January 25th, I believe it's January 25th, February 8th, and March 8th, 5 to 8.
I don't think I could do it. I'm out of town on the 25th, and then my daughter has a basketball game on another night. Otherwise, I would.
I'm okay doing it solo too, Lynn, if there isn't someone else who can commit, it's fine.
I think it would be great if we could find someone else, just so that you've got 2 representatives from each district board is the hope as we go into this. Who is missing from this meeting tonight?
Nobody.
You give
Better
the dates. I'm sorry, can you give the dates again? I have my calendar open again.
January 25th, February 8th, and March 8th.
And if I did that, it's not a conflict of interest because my husband is a teacher, right?
Correct.
Okay, I can do that.
Great.
Thank you, Erin.
Thanks, Erin.
So Mary, you'd want to probably have a board motion to nominate Erin to the negotiations council.
Okay, I'll make that motion to nominate Erin to the negotiations council. We'll do that by roll. Lisa,
Aye.
Emily,
Aye.
Kat,
Aye.
Erin,
Aye.
Miranda,
Aye.
Arlene,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
and Mary is an aye.
Thank you, everyone.
Lynn, say those dates one more time. I'm just putting them in my calendar now.
January 25th,
Yep,
February 8th,
yep.
and March 8th.
All right, cool. And it's 5 to 8, eh?
Yes,
Okay,
we'll feed you.
all right. And Lynn, just before we transition to budget, and backing up to the Sheldon principal search, we all okayed, that meeting, but what we didn't pick was who from the board do you want on, the committee, this kind of start to finish committee? Or who can do
I
it?
think that in terms of the screening committee,
Yeah,
there's an interest survey, so I think anyone from the board could fill out that interest survey. And what we did last time, Mary, is you and I, with a couple of the leaders here, central office, looked at all of it and tried to create a pretty balanced representative team. So
Yeah.
that would be the goal to doing that again. So if you want to do it that way, I'm willing to just have the board rep be one of the check boxes on that interest survey.
okay, sounds good. Thanks for clarifying that.
And then can you tell me though, how do you want to handle, I mean, we could talk about the interview questions at the end. I think you're going to have a long night if we go there. Or do you want to appoint a couple people to work on interview questions as kind of like a subcommittee with me to finalize board interview questions?
Yeah, let's do that. That makes sense.
So are there a couple people that would be interested in doing that?
I'll do it.
And I'll do it as well.
And so I heard Emily would be interested in doing site visits and helping with reference checks. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm happy to help too with the references and site visits if you need another person, and I can do interview question stuff as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
So far, Lynn, are the site visits far away, or are they relatively close? Would they be potentially?
It just depends. There are some close and there are some pretty far away. Like we would need an airplane.
I would take a vacation, it's fine.
Are they in warm, sunny locations? Sign me up.
Possibly.
Okay, anything else, Lynn? Or shall we dive into
I'm all set.
the
I'm all set.
morass
Thank you.
of the budget? Morgan, you're up.
Thanks. In terms of not FY24 budget, on my report, I think everything was informational. Still have not seen a first draft of the audit. We received one more tuition bill since I had written that, but it was only a handful of kids, so still anticipating that we'll have a surplus in tuition at the end of the year. I'm first going to walk you through the slideshow, and Mary, this is something that you and I can use as a starting point for whatever you want to present to the public, or you want me to present to the public.
Okay.
When we get to that point. The first half of it's going to be review. So we are now at January 4th. We have the CLA numbers. We should have a finalized equalized pupil count tomorrow. It did not come in today. And then just a reminder that board petitions are due on January 30th. They will go to Emily Fecto, who's the Berkshire Town Clerk, and your district clerk. You can also get them to me a few days before that, and I can get them to her. I can go to the next one. Budget objectives, I haven't changed this. You can move on. The only additional thing here is that surprise to no one that the rising real estate values are driving CLAs down across the state, and that drives your local tax rates up to make up for that. We'll talk about that a little more later. Enrollment slide, which Lynn also showed earlier, no change there. We are going to be talking about the mobile classroom option at Sheldon Elementary School. Everything else on this slide you've seen before. Have done a little bit of tweaking to the staffing changes. Are anticipating an additional NCSS cat worker at Sheldon Elementary to work one-on-one with the kiddo. So we have added that to this budget. Other than that, there have been no positions added or subtracted since you saw this in December. Much the same as last month. Again, the blue half is what you spend on your people. The light pink half is tuition. The dark pink section, that's the third biggest on there, are the services you get from the SU. So that's primarily transportation, special education, and food service. And then this is what we do. So the green, almost 2/3 is direct instruction, or is instruction, direct instruction first, tuition payments second, and then local special ed costs third. The slice in red is really that kind of other catch-all category. So the darker red is your debt service. And then that lighter red slice is the proposed construction amount, which we'll talk about later. And we'll update that with real numbers when we get to it. So the version that you did not see earlier, but that I'm about to show, has a FY24 proposed budget of $19,681. So an increase of just under 1.5 million. Go to the next slide. This is a chart kind of showing the history. The blue lines are what you've budgeted, and the red lines are what you've actually spent. I think the FY '21 dip there is primarily due to COVID, and there was a lot of things that we were not able to do, in which we are now as we return to normal. At some point, we are gonna talk and hopefully decide on an amount to move out of the general fund into the capital reserve fund. When we had this meeting last year, there was roughly 1.2 million in leftover money from FY '21. You decided to put half of that into the capital reserve fund and half of that into the budget to buy down the tax rate. We've got roughly 805,000 this year. So if you were to put the same amount towards buying down the tax rate, that would leave 200,000 to put into the capital reserve fund. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, but the article will read something like this. And that's really the only ability that you have to impact the revenue picture. So you'll see if we kept that at 605,000, your local revenue would be basically level from the year prior. The other chunk of that is your 2 small schools grants, or merger support grants, as they're now called. I've not seen an updated figure for them yet, but I'm told this is the sort of the last year we're guaranteed to get it. Talk about this more next year, but some of the weighting from the new weighting study gives you more advantage for low enrollment schools, and they're going to let you either get the benefit of the additional weighting or the merger support grant. So you're not going to get both. So we may see that go away, and if we do, it's okay, because it means we're going to get more equalized pupils. So the difference between those two numbers is your education spending. Because your revenue isn't changing, your ed spending is going up as much as your budget would go up. And that is the amount of money that the state is going to be sending to you in taxes. And so that's the figure that drives your property tax rates. Equalized pupils, you've got a few more than you had last year. This number is not quite final, but I don't anticipate it's going to move much. Our numbers haven't changed, but there were some other districts across the state who have submitted revised numbers, and so they may have a slight impact on our figures. And if you divide those two, you get the education spending per pupil. So with the budget that's in front of me, your ed spending per pupil would go up $1,300, and that ed spending per pupil is that chart that we put in all of our reports, sort of showing where the Franklin County districts are compared to the statewide average and the range of the state. This is how the budget article will likely read in your warning. There's a group of districts that are hoping that the legislature is going to make some pretty immediate changes to take out those last 2 sentences. And I can talk about the reasons if you want to, but as of right now, you need to put forward to the folks in your towns how much you want them to approve in terms of a bottom line budget, what that means for education spending in terms of dollars, and then what that means in terms of a percentage increase or decrease. So when I get data for that state chart, I will show you that. We don't have it in yet. Hopefully we'll have it in the next week or 2. So your ed spending per pupil is then going to be divided by the dollar yield. The dollar yield is the figure that the tax commissioner sets each year and that the legislature approves in May or June. The tax commissioner has set the dollar yield at $15,479. So that's a pretty dramatic increase, which is going to drive down your tax rates even with that big proposed increase in the budget. This, again, is not gonna be definite until the budget is long approved. I have not heard of any plans to take money out of the funds that kind of make up that 15,479. Last year, the tax commissioner put out a number, and the people at the Agency of Education were giving us a different number because they had an idea that the legislature was gonna pull some of that out for other uses. They ended up taking that out. I think that was how they funded universal meals. So we kind of knew ahead of time that the tax commissioner's number was not likely reality. Everyone that I've talked to across the state is using his number this year because there doesn't seem to be anybody that's planning on legislatively doing something to reduce that. Sorry, that was a really poor sentence, but I'm for once trying to be careful in what I say about this. Okay. So that gets you an equalized residential school tax rate of just under $1.14, which is 8.5 cents lower than the tax rate for FY23. So that, again, is really driven primarily by the yield increasing, as well as getting a handful of additional equalized pupils. In the next 4 years, as those weights are rolled out, we obviously don't know what the yield's gonna do, but you're gonna continue to see benefit from higher equalized pupils if we're reading the tea leaves correct. So that's kind of where the good news ends. And this is, if you warn this budget tonight, this is what you wanna be telling people. Cut tax rates by 8.5 cents. We'll then go into what happens with the CLA, the next one. So Bakersfield CLA has dropped 7%, Berkshire's has dropped 9%. And you can see that in Bakersfield, it means that that 8.5 cent decrease is actually gonna be about a 1.5 cent increase. A little more dramatic for Berkshire, 3.5 cent increase. And then if you go to the next one, Montgomery is at 3.5 and Sheldon at roughly 6.5. So again, this is not a function of your budget. This is a function of someone is sitting on a $100,000 house in Montgomery, and the state knows that it's really worth $120,000 now. So they're trying to correct the tax rates for that. What this means for your towns is that all 4 towns in NMV and I believe Enosburg is in this bucket as well, are now required by statute to have a townwide reappraisal. I think there's at least a 3-year window for them to do it, and it may be longer.
Wait, which towns are doing a reappraisal?
All 4 NMV towns need to do a reappraisal, not that they're doing it yet. One of the town clerks I've talked to has said that they can't find anybody to do it. So I don't know what the reality is of 5 out of our 6 towns doing it, when probably 200 out of 250 towns in Vermont are likely in this same bucket. But that day is coming, and the year that you get a townwide reappraisal, you're likely to see your tax rates then tank for nothing that you guys are doing, but it'll definitely be happy times.
Next.
Yep. So this is a graph of the equalized homestead tax rates. So this is after the CLA is applied. We're starting with the first year of unification. So you can see that as a district, the tax rate was relatively flat for 2 years, drifted up a little bit, and then has dropped pretty precipitously. Again, this is primarily due to the yield and your town's not losing equalized pupils while other towns in the state are. Up above that, you can see what's happening in each of the individual towns. So Everybody saw a decline from 22 to 23, but even though your district-wide tax rate is going down in 24, everyone is going up, Sheldon pretty sharply in that same time, and that's because of the CLA. Over those 5 years, Berkshire and Montgomery are relatively flat, Bakersfield and Sheldon were relatively up, and I suspect that that's probably tracking property sales pretty accurately. I shared with you a draft of the annual meeting warning, and I've got it up here that we'll be able to talk through it at your annual meeting. So at your meeting, you elect from the floor a moderator and a clerk, and then everything else is done by ballot on town meeting day. You're electing board seats from Bakersfield, Berkshire, and Sheldon. You can go to the next slide. Then you'll have your article for the budget. You'll have an article to move funds to the capital reserve fund, and then there's an article that your lawyer still wants on there, giving you authority to borrow money as per statute. You likely have that anyway, but we put it on there because he tells us we have to, basically. And then the last part of this slide is the polling locations. So everybody's open till 7 across the state. Montgomery opens at 10. Berkshire and Bakersfield, I believe, open at 10, and then Sheldon opens earlier.
I don't think that's right for where they're having their location.
Bakersfield?
Yeah.
Oh, that's where we go.
Okay. They've asked about.
Well, they've asked about changing?
I did ask the town clerk, but I'll double check that because we don't want to get that wrong.
Yeah. Bishop, you know.
What town was that? The
Bakersfield?
question?
Bakersfield, they asked me about the school, so.
Yeah, I know Berkshire opens at 10.
I know we talked about this before, but how come Sheldon is the only one where the vote takes place at the school, and then does that mean that the doors are unlocked all day?
I don't know why, it's just historic that they've held it there.
We still do, you know, old school town meeting, have Girl Scout cookies and snacks. They used to do lunch. It's just kind of part of our town culture.
But there are no students in the building that day,
No,
correct?
other than the Girl Scouts, no.
Gotcha. Okay.
Let's go to this one. So this was in your packet, and the version Courtney has is slightly different than the one that you have in your packet. I'm just gonna first tell you about the changes since what I sent out last night. As I told you, I added a cat worker. I corrected some salary on an employee that was not calculating right. I think I increased a tuition payment for an out-of-district kiddo, where we got some additional information, but I believe that that is it. So if you can scroll down a little bit, the section that starts in blue, the bottom half of that page, is kind of what I just walked you through on those last couple of slides. And that shows that should be the same as what we just presented in terms of the different tax rates. If you go back up to, kind of right there's good. So you'll see on this construction line, we've got a flat amount of 200,000. I put that in there before we had seen any of these quotes when we were thinking, oh, how much can a modular building cost? It must be about 200,000, and then we'll get the site work done. out of this year's general fund budget and get that done before June 30th. Obviously, that number may be insufficient. You do have a capital reserve fund of $605,000. With this budget as it's set up in terms of the revenue piece, you potentially could be adding another $200,000 to that capital reserve fund. The advantage of the capital reserve fund is that it doesn't go away at the end of the year, so it's sitting there. You can make changes to that, or you can draw down funds from that as you need them, and it doesn't revert back to the voters. The $200,000, which we have under construction, as I think about the discussion we just had, you've only got the year to spend it, but you've really got a lot more flexibility because the voters are giving you a bottom line to spend. And if that said 200,000 and you had a whole bunch of tuition kids that showed up, you could use that money to pay those tuition payments for them, whereas you couldn't use the capital reserve fund for that. So it's differently flexible. You can, within the year that you can use it, you can really use it for anything. For example, if we decide to move forward with a lease option on a smaller modular unit while we get our act together for a vote for a more permanent solution in Sheldon. And I think Vern's scrambling to try to come up with what a lease
What that
payment might
lease
be
could
on a
look like as a
200 or a
placeholder.
400,000. So that's the rub if you are comfortable with where the tax rates are ending up. You could take that 200,000 out of construction, reduce your budget by 200,000, but ask for 400,000 to go into capital reserve, and it would have no impact on the tax rate. Or you could do the opposite. We could put 400,000 in on construction, but change that use of fund balance to the full 805 and not ask them to put anything into capital reserves. And that's assuming that you're comfortable with the 8.5 cent decrease, given what the CLA is doing. So maybe I'll leave it at that and try to field any questions.
Morgan, before you go to questions, I just want to have you mention briefly about the tax commissioner's letter and what the anticipated overall spending increases are throughout Vermont.
Sure. So the tax commissioner has to kind of look at all the revenue that's coming in and also ask the AOE to ask all of us what we think is going to happen to our budgets. And they're asking us in October, November, and so we really haven't had any meetings with any of you yet. The increase that the AOE got back from the field and the AOE then passed on to the tax commissioner was around an 8% budget increase. So that's what everyone's best guess was kind of going into budget season. We're pretty much right at that 8.07% increase in terms of your expenditures, so it's an 8.13% increase in terms of equalized pupils. We don't really talk about that after November, and so I don't know if that number's drifting up or down. And in terms of a statewide system, there's really 3 or 4 schools where it matters the most because they have the biggest budgets. Burlington, Brattleboro, South Burlington, if they're all increasing by more than 8%, it puts a bigger push on the statewide tax rate than if little tiny districts are doing that. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted me to add to that, Lynn?
No, that was what I was looking for.
And so, as I've done in the past, if at this point, if you want to move that 8.5 cents down by a penny, it's the equivalent of 9 more kids, 9 more equalized pupils, which you don't really control. The yield moving $137, which you don't control, or changing your budget $165,000. So either reducing expenses, increasing revenue, or a combination of the two.
And really, the biggest piece of flexibility that we have would be that construction line, if we
Yes.
wanted to move the needle on that.
I would say it's all programmatic, so we do have new positions in there. I think, Lynn has certainly made a case for keeping them in there.
Yeah,
But that's also in addition, the construction piece is in there. And other than that, it's things like insurance and the increases to your returning staff and what we're predicting in terms of increases to your support staff.
yeah,
Which, a few months ago felt like I was shooting high, and, what I'm seeing now, wearing my other hat and competing for staff, I'm thinking it might be low. So,
right, right. I mean, all the additional human resource people are all necessary and needed. I mean, we've kind of been through that quite a bit, the need for the additional staffing that's now budgeted here. So I don't see a lot of flexibility in that domain. And then the biggest variable right now with this is this conversation around the space issue for Sheldon and how to budget appropriately for it and where that money comes from.
mhm.
And so Morgan, here with the construction, you've got 200,000 unless it's different up there. No, that one didn't change
I have
from
not
what's here,
changed it, because
from
I
what's
knew
here.
this discussion was coming, so.
And then you're saying that whatever is above and beyond that, we would be pulling out of the general fund balance?
Whatever's above that, you would be either pulling out of the capital reserve fund, or if we get site work done by June 30th, and because of those lower tuition payments, we can get those bills paid this year, we'll get them paid this year, and we won't raise
Yeah.
your capital reserve fund.
Okay, and
Um,
how much, remind me how much we have in the capital reserve fund,
605,
and now we're gonna put an additional,
that's up for discussion, but if you wanna leave this, the use of fund balance, if you wanna flatline that, that would leave 200,000 to put in the capital reserve.
yeah,
And again, you could take out the expense of the 200,000, and you could reduce the fund balance, use of fund balance by 200,000, and it would lower your budget to 19,481, but it wouldn't change your tax rate.
yeah. Okay. I mean, I wanna be mindful of not dipping into that capital reserve too much as far as just specific to Sheldon and the Sheldon project goes, because we have other, not nearly as big ticket items, but Vern, I'm not wrong, that we have some boilers and other
Down, yes.
things, one of the was there something with one of the roofs, or?
Nothing major.
No, okay, but some of those bigger ticket items, we just wanna be thoughtful about
Yeah.
having those funds available.
Just to answer your question, I don't wanna go back on this, but I just did some research for, so commercial square foot building prices, on the low end, it's $313 a square foot.
Okay, I
So if
did
you-
400
so
when
if
I
you-
did my math.
And the highest is 562, so
Yeah.
if you're commercially low, you're looking at 782,000. High would be 1.5 million. And then a residential square foot would be $225 a square foot. So you're looking at about 630 in the low and 1.1 million on the high, because that'd be about 400 on residential. So
Mhm.
just to give you something to peg away.
Yeah. And the bond we just did, or it feels like we just did, was 1.7 million.
Yes,
Berkshire's
1.79.
was 3.7, Montgomery's and Bakersfield's were long enough ago that I don't remember,
Yeah.
but we probably have about 4 or 5 years on each of those, and they, I think they go one after the other. Berkshire, we've got another 10 years, would you say, Lynn? That was 2012-ish.
Yeah, is it 12? Might have been 14. I'd say you've got at least between 12 and 15 years.
And were those bonds for like big additions?
Berkshire's was for an addition, Montgomery's was for an addition, and Bakersfield's was for
Roof?
was for a roof. I don't think we added any square footage to it. And yeah, in terms of future needs, none of those schools I don't think are bursting at the seams. Montgomery has nowhere to go but up. We built pretty much on every usable square foot there. Berkshire, we could probably build a school to cover all kids in FNESU on the space that you have.
Depends if you want to fill in some of the swamp areas too.
But I don't see any pressing needs in any of those 3 schools, unless the demographics change pretty dramatically.
Yeah, I don't think the trend lines indicate that. We've actually seen some downward trends in some of those schools. Sheldon is certainly our most urgent need.
And so, and Vern, I know it's hard to guess, but what a lease might cost, like if,
For the modular?
yeah.
Yeah, I just researched, they're saying anywhere from $100 to $600 per month, depending on size. So I'll make a phone call tomorrow and get some solid numbers and I'll send them.
Okay,
If that's, if that's a possibility as far as
Right.
kind of getting us.
right, just
Over
as
the-
a
over the
stopgap
hump
measure.
Yeah.
While we discuss the bigger considerations for this long-term projected
Yeah.
growth and what that might look like, and just building a healthier building.
Yeah, that feels low for the space we need, but why not?
I thought so too.
Just trying to
That's
think
why
of-
I'm kind of trying to, I want to make a phone call to find out square footage, what they're looking at, because that seems kind of low to me as well. The 600 for the size building that we need.
And Morgan, the construction line here once it's budgeted like this, it really is only for construction. So we couldn't pull that to cover the cost of the lease if we decided to do that instead.
The money in your general fund, you have complete control over.
Yeah.
So that you can move around. It's once it goes into the capital reserve fund,
Yep,
it's kind of specifically worded. I don't know if lease of additional space would fall under that.
yeah,
We'd have to look how we worded the original article and see if the lawyers would back us up.
right,
I could make a straight face argument that we need additional building space, and even if it's not owned and it's not attached to the building, it's a legitimate use of that fund, but I'd want
Right.
somebody with a JD to tell me I'm right.
right. And so, I guess the question is really, we're just saying that, I'm just still kind of stuck on whether we want this 200,000 for the construction if it's needed, if we're really leaning more toward a lease option and consideration of a proper build. But I don't know kind of where other people are at with that. And it's not, I mean, in the scope of this massive budget, I know it's not a huge, it doesn't really move the needle enormously, one way or the other.
Right, certainly if you're going to have a relatively cheap Band-Aid for a year or more, it's more useful for you to have more money in the capital reserve fund. Because then when we actually are at a point where we're looking at a project, then maybe you have $1 million in there rather than 800,000.
Right. Thoughts from folks about that strategy?
I think it sounds like a good plan, addressing the immediate need, but definitely looking down the line and being smart with the dollars and making an investment on something that seems more safe, stable, and consistent with the structure that we currently have.
Yeah.
I agree. I think if we're working to spend tax dollars money wisely and investing, that putting something in place temporarily and then investing in a build is where we should go. So the way it's set up now, I think it helps to show that.
So just for my clarification, that what you're supporting would be to take the 200,000 out of the budget and bump up the capital reserve article to 400,000? Is that what I'm hearing?
I think that's the general consensus, yeah.
So in that case, your bottom line budget would be 19,481, 245. With a decrease in your local revenue of the additional 200,000, assuming that article passes. And it leaves your tax rates at the numbers that I shared with you on the screen earlier.
And so then the other consideration, Morgan, remind me, we always have this timing issue where we need to be mindful of, we already warned our SU budget, correct?
The budget is
Right.
approved, you don't actually have to warn it because nobody, you
Nobody
as a
votes
board
on
are
it
the only ones who
specifically,
vote.
right. So the piece around whether we'd have to circle back to this to adjust it.
So I have a complete guess in terms of your tech center tuition because we have not received any
Right.
of that data yet.
Yeah.
I was supposed to come in this afternoon and I'll check my email, it had not come in at 7. Yeah, it has not come in yet. So it's possible that there could be a big swing there. In which case I would try to bring you back together before, I think it's the 23rd-ish that we have to warn.
Yeah.
That's the only, it's the only thing that I can imagine changing your expense side. Because you're only warning the expenses if the state came back and said, we're gonna give you $500,000 in small schools grants, which or not, but if something changed on the revenue side, you wouldn't need to take any more action. We would just change the numbers that we're presenting to the boards, but the budget would still be the budget.
Yeah, but it's that tuition piece
Yeah,
that's still up in the air enough that it could
Yep.
necessitate circling back and tweaking this number.
exactly.
Okay. But better to err on warning, like landing here and warning it.
I think
And
so.
sparing the need, potentially the need for a special meeting.
Exactly.
Okay,
Because you won't meet as a board again until February.
yeah,
If there was something with the hiring timeline that required another meeting, maybe I'd feel comfortable punting it. But if you're not gonna be together anyway, I would say you've got a quorum. We'll wanna get it
yeah.
on now.
And as far as upcoming support staff negotiations, I mean, we've padded to reflect where we suspect we will land.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, any other questions from folks about the budget? And warning it now, regardless of some of the uncertainties around tuition. People feel comfortable?
So I'm gonna take a few minutes to update these, and then I'll put the warning up, and I'll give you the tuition rates that are tied to that.
Yeah, okay.
And then I'll need 4 motions at that point.
Yeah.
And before I take my little pause to do that, I just want to remind Arlene, John, and Miranda are the 3 that are up for election this year. So I can send out the petitions that you need. They can be signed by anybody in any of the 4 towns. I think the number is 30. I would say get 50 and then you're safe.
Get 50?
Signatures, yeah.
You only need 30, but
I
get
think you only need 30.
And Morgan, this budget includes the new cat worker in Sheldon?
Yep.
Where is that line item? I'm just curious.
It's gonna be, are you looking at the detail?
Yeah, I'm looking at the detailed one, 28 page.
Yeah, sorry
I'm
about
just
that.
curious what that costs.
It costs 40,000 and change.
Okay.
It may actually not be in the version that you have, because I just
And health
added it.
insurance went up 13, was it 13% this year?
So, yeah. Yeah, 12 and a half. So Lynn, I'm gonna work on these, and then they can do the actual motions at the end of the meeting, if you wanna move to principals.
Yeah, why don't we do that and move on, do principal reports, and we can circle back to that, and then we still have an executive session to do as well. So Rhoda, do you have anything that you'd like to highlight or
Sure.
talk about?
I just wanted to highlight the second grade presentations of their writing that they did. It was really a neat thing to watch. They set it up almost like a poetry reading and had everyone around, and students stood up at a podium and shared their writing. So it wasn't just the writing that they had been working on, but the public speaking as well. And it was a really nice time, and they did a great job.
That's great, thank you. Lenny?
We caught the snowflake bandit.
Awesome.
But like as I said, the Department of Magical Mischief and the behavior support team, we're still concerned that there's conflicting evidence, so we might not have actually gotten the head perpetrator. So we're still on the lookout for future miscreants and misbehaviors, but everyone had a really good time with it. The students were super excited. There was some quality engagement online with some parents talking about their kids were always talking about it when they came home, so it was a fun thing. I think that's a fun little segue to what we've started doing, these few different faculty meetings around student engagement. And I'm saying that word, but probably meaning something broader than that. We're bringing up the conversation with our staff about what are the things that will help increase student engagement, draw them into school, have them feel excited about school, have them feel connected to school, having school feel authentic, also increasing community connections. And I started it with a little meandering speech from what do I actually remember from school? And I think we all can say, if we ask us what are the things that really bump up to school, it's probably not when we learned Pythagoras' theorem, although math is important as in social studies and science, but it's all those kind of other things that are really special and wonderful. And we've sort of lost sight on those during our COVID years and wanting to bring back things that are already in our school. But I asked them to start with an exercise of, after I kind of gave them examples of things I remembered from college, high school, and elementary school that didn't have to specifically do with specific core contents, and then kind of got their brains thinking, what are some things that went through your time as a student and or as a parent and or as a teacher? And we've been kind of working from that starting brainstorming process to start iterating ideas about maybe some things we want to have happen longer term down the road, and or particularly we're going to work towards finding 3 or 4 things we definitely want to make sure we start having happen as soon as possible. So we've gone through a couple faculty meeting rounds around that, and we're getting closer and closer to kind of nailing out a couple really big exciting things we want to start bringing back or bringing up again or inventing new again. So,
Right,
we're going to bring lots of magic to the school, that's the goal.
that's great. Sandy, nice to see you.
I would just like to highlight our, I think it's kind of comical, I mentioned in my report that our middle school team rearranged their schedule the last week prior to break, and they did a lot of SEL work. They scheduled it in various places during the day. And our middle school math teacher, Jake Hartman, we had a staff meeting yesterday morning, and we do celebrations, and they were celebrating how well the middle school kids did and all that through that week. And apparently Jake offered laughing yoga and the kids that participated. And he had us all laughing in the staff meeting because I guess you have to make yourself laugh. So, and it's a real thing. And I had never heard of it before, but it was just hysterical because we started at the staff meeting. He goes, yeah, I'm going to have to look at someone and go, ha ha ha. And it just makes the next person laugh. So anyway, see, it works. Try it. See? So it cracked us up yesterday. That's how we started our day at 7:40 in the morning. So.
Nice, I love it. That's great, thanks, Sandy. We don't have our Sheldon principals here, so that kind of brings us to the end of the meeting, other than we have an executive session and we have the warnings,
I think I'm ready.
or the motions around the warnings.
So I'm going to share motion.
Oh, boy. Can you share that?
I can also,
So I
yeah,
can
I will send you a
read it?
packet as well.
I don't have access to it,
No.
so I can't share it.
So this is also pretty much the same as what I had sent to you yesterday. Articles 3 through 6 are going to be by Australian ballot. Moderator and clerk elect from the floor. Arlene's seat, John's seat, Miranda's seat. And then shall the voters of the district approve the school board to expend $19,481,245, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. It is estimated that this proposed budget, if approved, will result in education spending of $17,645 per equalized pupil. this projected spending per equalized pupil is 8.13% higher than spending for the current year. Should the revenue picture or the equalized pupils change significantly enough that those two scary numbers go down, we could certainly redo the warning. I
Okay,
don't think it's gonna move enough to have much of an impact.
okay.
And then Article 5, shall the voters authorize the Board of School Directors to deposit $400,000 of surplus funds from the 2021-2022 school year into the capital reserve fund?
I'll make those motions. Do I need to read them out, Morgan?
So I can read them out so that everybody gets them in the minutes. Just have to find them. So the first is a motion to warn an FY24 Northern Mountain Valley Unified Union School District budget of $19,481,245.
I'll make that motion. By roll, Lisa,
Aye.
I,
Emily,
Aye.
Aaron,
I,
Miranda, Arlene,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
and Mary is an aye.
And there are two motions related to a tuition rate being announced. This is really a formality for you, but if there was a sending district somewhere that wanted to send you a third grader,
Yeah.
this is what they would have to pay. So the first would be a motion to announce an FY24 elementary tuition rate of $17,250.
I'll make that motion. By roll, Lisa,
Aye.
Kat,
I,
Emily,
Aye.
Aaron,
Aye.
Miranda,
Aye.
Arlene,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
and Mary is an aye.
And then a motion to announce an FY24 secondary tuition rate of $17,250.
I'll make that motion. Lisa,
Aye.
Kat,
I,
Emily,
Aye.
Aaron,
Aye.
Miranda, Arlene,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
and Mary is an aye.
And then a motion to approve and direct the board chair to sign the Northern Mountain Valley Unified Union School District 2023 annual meeting warning.
I'll make that motion. Lisa,
Aye.
Kat,
I,
Emily,
Aye.
Aaron,
Aye.
Miranda, Arlene,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
and Mary is an aye.
That's all I got.
All right, thanks for that heavy lift, Morgan. Really appreciate it. Okay, I'm gonna make a motion to go into executive session at 8:59. Thank you, everyone, for being here. By roll, Lisa,
Aye.
Kat,
I,
Emily,
Aye.
Aaron. Oh, right, Miranda.
Aye.
Arlene.
Aye.
John. Mary's an aye. All right, so we are out of executive session. It's
Recording in progress.
It's 9:26, we're exiting executive session, and we, I'm gonna make Lynn, you want this as a motion?
Yes, please.
We will make a motion for the superintendent to act as per executive session regarding personnel issues. By roll, Emily,
Aye.
Kat,
I,
Lisa,
Aye.
Miranda,
Aye.
Arlene, John,
Aye.
Mary's an aye. All right, our next meeting will be on February 1st. We're all aware it's starting earlier. at, what did we say?
I'm sure we'll get a reminder for that, right?
Yes.
We will, and I've already
Yes.
put it in the notes that I want Courtney to do,
What, I missed
a quorum call.
In advance of the February meeting, because it's at 4:30 start time,
Yeah.
to just make sure that everyone remembers and that we have a quorum, which it seems as though
Okay.
we will have a
Got
quorum.
it, sorry.
And that meeting will also be here in Enosburg.
Or is it at Sheldon?
No, that'll be at Sheldon.
Oh, right, okay. Because we're doing the interviews. Okay, so
Right.
that'll be at Sheldon, all right. And we're gonna, because of the late hour and the impending ice on the roads, we're gonna skip the SU board representative report tonight. So I'm making a motion to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you all so much. Drive safely, get home safe.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
It
you.
looks like
Take care.
it's just.